Hi, all. These are generally conversations between adults after the children have left the table. The language can be spicy, and the subjects can get saucy. So, if you're ready, this is the Southern Fork. Unscripted chats with some of the most interesting culinary voices in the American South. This region is one of the country's vacation and retirement playgrounds. But beyond the warm weather and beautiful scenery, there's a rich culture steeped in community and often dark and complicated history, and plenty of innovation among the tradition. I'm Stephanie Burt, and I've spent a career covering this region for magazines, newspapers, and websites. And to me, the best introduction to the American South is through its food culture and the growers and makers who make it delicious. I invite you to come on the road with me from the Appalachian Mountains to the clear waters of the Gulf of Mexico and everywhere in between. I'm always hungry for that next bite, thirsty for the next sip, and ready for the next conversation. Let's dig in. The Southern Fork is supported today by Big Spoon Roasters. I've been a fan of these small batch nut butters for years before I interviewed co-founder Mark Overbay in 2022. And that's because they're not even in the same category of your average peanut butter. Produced in Hillsborough, North Carolina, these specialty spreads use the most sustainably sourced products available in recipes ranging from Fiji ginger almond butter that includes mission almonds, crystallized ginger, and sea salt, to a lemon cookie, cashew, and coconut butter. They make nut butters for you chocolate fans too, and limited seasonal recipes that pop up on the scene sometimes as well. Over the years, I've received jars from them a few times to play with and potentially use in recipes, but that's been an utter fail. I've just ended up eating them straight from the jar with a spoon every time. Visit bigspoonroasters.com to check out all the nut butters, energy bars, and even peanut butters for dogs, and order online or look for them at Whole Foods and other specialty grocery retailers. Big Spoon Roasters believes our food choices matter, and choosing Big Spoon is a delicious decision. Dave Smoke McCluskey, an official member of the Mohawk Nation, has spent more than 30 years in the culinary industry, and everything from fine dining kitchens to catering gigs to even organizing and hosting boucheries. Those are traditional gatherings centered around communal hog butchering that also offer a space to celebrate local foodways and swap knowledge, stories, and seeds. It was at one such gathering that he was gifted some corn, and from that came Corn Mafia, his research, education, and micromilling project to explore native foodways. He's participated in many food festivals through the years, including in 2022 when he hosted a cooking demo as part of Virginia Tech's Center for Food Systems and Community Transformation. He partners with South Carolina's Congaree Milling to produce his small batch products from hominy to masa, and he primarily sells them via word of mouth. Dave currently lives in Augusta and is the Chef de Cuisine at the Augusta Mariott Hotel. Welcome to the Southern Fork, Dave.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Thanks for feeding me lunch. That hominy was giving me life, I'm telling you.
Oh, well, thank you.
It was delicious. There was a ramp and leek sauce. What is that? A sauce?
What did you call it? For lack of a better term, it was kind of a crab dip with ramp and leeks and cream cheese.
And what was the green on there?
The green is an attempt at me to layer things. I get accused of layering my foods quite a bit, but this was some kind of poached parsley and ramp and leek green, and I just pureed it.
Yeah, it was lovely. And then, of course, corn nuts.
The corn nuts are
Corn nuts was not in my childhood and not in my house growing up.
They should have been.
They should have been, and they are a wonderful bar snack.
They sure are.
Just perfect. So it was corn, crab, and corn. So it's the 3 C's, really.
Right. Happiness. Well, cream cheese even. So.
There are 4 C's. There
Right.
you go. Cream cheese. There you go. Well, it can't be Southern without cream cheese.
Right, exactly. No orange cheddar. I laid down the law with the no orange cheddar.
But the cream cheese is really one of the food groups here in the American South. But we're really not here to talk about Philadelphia cream cheese today. Who could sponsor me if they wanted? We are here to talk all things indigenous foodways and corn. So we're just going to start at it. Okay, you're a micromiller. That's what people have heard. Deciding to mill your own corn is a rabbit hole to go down. What made all of this happen?
Pandemic is what kind of started. I mean, I was already dabbling in it pre-pandemic, but pandemic really kind of kicked it off. Just, with a few hundred pounds of raw corn underneath our guest bedroom bed, wondering when I was going to start seeing moths, and eventually had my wife wanting to divorce me. I said, I'm going to have to do something with this corn. And I called up a friend, Ken Dubard, at Congaree Milling, and asked him if he'd kind of sponsor a run of hominy corn that I just wanted to see if it's feasible.
Yeah. And so you had that corn. Most people don't have 400 pounds of corn laying around.
No.
So you had that corn because you're working the boucheries, right?
Right. I was traveling around doing boucheries, and people would give me things and I'd save things, or sometimes in the seed world, you might say hoard things. So I had it, and I was like, well, I got to do something with it. And Ken said, yeah, he was excited to help out. I think I did about 150 pounds as the original batch. I opened my mouth on social media, and it promptly sold out in a day or two. And then, so I cooked the rest of it, and that promptly sold out in a few days as well. So I've kind of been blessed in a way that people have received it as well as they have. And I'm still 3 years in, 4 years in now. I'm still pretty much word of mouth.
What I had today was, can you use the term for me?
Nixtamalization? Nixtamalized corn.
Yes, nixtamalized corn. Now, Southern Fork listeners, I am a science nerd. I do know what this word means. I also know how to spell it. And I've actually seen it done. However, pronunciation is a completely different thing. So this is the process of...
We Mohawks would say we wash the corn. So we're veering away a little bit from the, I say, Mexican term of the nixtamalization. Mm-hmm. That's in the HODL word originally. So, but we say to wash the corn. So, I generally wash the corn in hardwood ash, which hardwood ash and water makes a light lye solution. So that washes the pericarp, or the skin, off of the corn. But part of its chemical process is that it converts the vitamins and minerals and the calcium and the niacin that are in the corn to being bioavailable to humans. Previously wasn't. I've come to think of this as a kind of a brilliant bit of indigenous science.
It is.
And I tell the kids that when I lecture to college students, that it's native science. It's impossible to believe that an observant people didn't know what was going on with all of this stuff. So
the people thrived when they ate that food.
So
right.
It's kind of threefold when you look at it. Nixtamalization does all those things for the healthy corn, but it gets rid of the pericarp, which is the indigestible part of corn. So it melts that pericarp. So the cool thing there is it melts the pericarp, but in the absence of gluten, the melted pericarp forms a weak gel that allows masa, or corn flour, to be held together in a dough, which you will have tortillas and tamales and papusas and all kinds of fun things, arepas. You can have all these things that you couldn't have with, as I kind of say, buckle boy corn, like Quaker oats or Quaker cornmeal, because Europeans, for some reason, I don't know if it was laziness or arrogance, have insisted on not following the practice of nixtamalization, which I find next to impossible that any natives would have shared, or a succession of natives would have shared corn with them and not shown them this imperative process.
And it's a pretty simple process of mixing the water and the wood ash, but most companies and most makers use chemicals to do this. And so the wood ash, and Matt and Ted Lee told me that your hominy would be smoky, and it definitely does have a smokiness to it, which, Southerners really love some smoke.
Right. Some folks do, some folks don't. Now, part of the drying process of most of my corn starts out with a little bit of fire roasting, as I say. I'm trying to replicate a foodway without owning a longhouse to properly dry our fresh corn from the field in. So kind of back that up a little bit by saying traditionally, Mohawk people would harvest their corn and braid it into braids, the husks into braids. And so they kind of had these big ropes, if you will. If you've ever seen my Instagram page, you'll probably see me with a rope of it around my neck. But that would hang from the rafters of our longhouses. And our longhouses were poorly vented, if you will. So they're very smoky affairs. It was like living in a smokehouse. And as a chef, I'd hear people say, well, corn's really bland. I don't eat a lot of it. And I go, well, why? Because we had a rich and vibrant culture of arts and history and oral history and politics and things like that. And generally when you have societies like that, you have foodways that go along with it that are pretty good. Robust, if you will. Yeah, because that mind is there thinking of things. So part of the dehumanization that Europeans used, I believe, with natives was just to constantly denigrate us or denigrate the beliefs of our having a robust mind. As a chef, I said, well, what are we missing? As you're talking with other native chefs, we talk about our foodways and what are we missing? A lot of that's herbs and seasonings and foraged items that when you're ethnically cleansed from your homelands, a lot of the time you find yourself in a place where you don't know anything. You don't know the plants. Most natives where they live have intimate contact with the plants and animals that are around them. They know what's edible. They know all of these things. But when you're forcefully removed from that area, you lose.
That is the term reservation.
Right.
They were moved onto those lands that were not their originals.
We were chased all the way up into northern New York and lost, once treaties were set and whatnot, we lost access to bear. We ate quite a bit of black bear. Pork as a substitute for bear because we were forbidden to go down into the Adirondacks and hunt. After the revolution. So one of my thought processes was, well, what's missing? And then as I was at the Augusta boucherie that I helped found and put on, I went, it's got to be smoke. There's smoke in there somewhere. Kind of the realization that we cooked everything over an open fire. Absolutely everything. So we dug a pit at that boucherie and kind of so we could almost stand in a pit and have a nice fire going so the wind wouldn't really affect us because we were cooking over hardwood. And I just kind of what I realized is that there's smoke. Even like I stuck a pot of beans in my grandmother's bean pot in that pit just to see how it worked.
Yeah.
Because that bean pot, if you look at this on my neck here, this is one of our traditional pots. It's very similar to a bean pot. So, I don't know, that's smoky. So I took some corn that we had nixtamalized. I took some raw stuff that we had for that event, and I put it in our friend's smoker. It's called the Game Changer smoker. It burns wood at a temperature where it doesn't have a ton of smoke, but you have a ton of smoke flavor. And we left it in there for a few hours, and I forgot about it. It was, you're running around doing an event as an organizer, and you just. So I stuffed it all in mason jars and put it in the back of my car, forgot about it, and then got doing a bunch of other things. When pandemic hit, I'm cleaning out, obviously, that one corn, but I'm also cleaning out the smoked corn. I opened up the jar, and it was like an epiphany. I was like, that's what we've been missing. It smelled like a perfectly smoked piece of ham.
Yeah.
Nothing fake, nothing just, it had enough time in there. So at the time, I just had a hand crank mill like you'd buy in a Mexican store. And I ground it up.
I do know that word, tienda.
Tienda, la tienda, sí. I ground it up, and my son was sitting in the chair, kind of not really paying attention as we did. But I started to cook some of it. He, like myself, loves bacon, might even worship bacon, but he went, "Are you cooking bacon?" And I went, no, I'm cooking corn, which she didn't want anything to do with, but because it wasn't bacon. But it was that flavor that kind of wafted through the whole house that I went, I think I'm onto something. In the fact that not only do we miss certain ingredients, but we miss smoke. So most of our cuisine would have smoke involved with it. Vegetables, or you think of smoked fish. We ate a ton of smoked fish that sat over fires to dry. We didn't salt a lot of that stuff. We dried it to the point where it's desiccated. Desiccated fish will hold for years.
What did you eat growing up? I'm sure you had some native foods
I had some native foods here and there. Yeah, I mean, we'd eat mush now and then. We'd eat Johnny cakes now and then. My immediate family, were city Indians. There were a lot of folks that their grandparents moved to cities post-World War II for work. My family chose Syracuse, New York, and there were other Mohawk families there. So we ate things that were pretty Americanized, though, So there were things that you'd eat now and then, like someone had come up with some corn soup that maybe they brought some corn soup down from up north, as we say. And we'd have some corn soup if your grandparents let you, because it was a commodity to them. Wild game here and there.
Did you cook with anybody
No,
when you were a kid?
I did not.
No.
Years ago, I did a Thanksgiving show for CBS. Hi, guys. That tried to get me to say that I grew up with a reservation. I learned how to cook for my mom and my grandmother and all. Just
I don't try to get you to say anything.
Just the New York, the New York Hollywood story. And I said no. I said there's 35 people on the res that are family watching tomorrow when this airs. And, so I avoided that. But a lot of it is I've been in kitchens since I was 12. Growing up on Cape Cod, it was one of the jobs that you could get as a kid readily. Anthony Bourdain said in his book that those kitchens at the time, his first jobs were on Cape Cod where I grew up. And he said it was like having a bunch of pirates around or working with a bunch of pirates. Well, when I read the book, I was like, yeah, exactly. Because it was wild and crazy and it was fun and it was wild. And as a teenage boy, at 13, the chef tells you can stab a lobster in the face and cut it almost all the way through and pull its guts out and then put stuffing into it and then put it in the oven. And you're going to pay me and feed me French fries and fresh sliced turkey every day when I come in? Okay, I'm here.
You're there.
$2 an hour,
So when it comes to corn, though, when it comes to thinking about going back and reclaiming, so it's more than just corn. You're actually a student of history. You're reclaiming so much. Would you use the word reclaim?
Folks say rematriate.
Okay, explain. Can you unpack that?
We're a matriarchal society, so most things that come from nature are a gift from our mother, the earth. So kind of take a female form, if you will, or foodways are generally a woman's area without being a patriarchal asshole. It's what they do. Growing corn is what they do. So it's a very alien area for me to operate in at times because contextually that was woman's area of purview. Men did other things, but we helped plant, we helped harvest and things like that. But the cooking thing, that was a woman's purview, and a lot of men learned to cook, obviously, because we had to. But so, as a professional chef, as somebody that's worked in restaurants that feed people day in and day out, and you kind of have to develop a mindset of, well, okay, they're here Monday, I need them back here on Wednesday or Thursday or even Saturday night to give me more money, to eat some other food that they like. It's always like, well, okay, that one thing's good, but what else can I do with these ingredients that's going to seem like it's different, but it's not? As I've come to think of it as corn, bean, and squash, the three sisters, are all vehicles. So they're all vehicles for the other things that are in our cosmos, if you will. Fish, deer, now pig.
Smoke.
Mushrooms, smoke. There's so much more there that influences things, and usually, like when you save foodways, people that save foodways sometimes save one thing. So they save it a specific way or a very specific way. And what I've kind of realized as a chef is that not everybody's stuff is perfect, or it's a little bit different than the other. Some of us banter about, there shouldn't be onions in our corn soup. I use this as an example all the time, but it could be one family that saved that recipe on our reserve, and Uncle Jimmy didn't like onions.
Right.
And within 2 or 3 generations, you've forgotten that it was Uncle Jimmy's issue. Yeah.
Right.
So, and then it's forbidden. You can't have onions in there. Well, a lot of our foodways have been saved, 1 or 2 things like that. So they're viewed as, well, that's the only thing. It's like, that's not the only thing we ate. Corn soup's a wonderful thing, but if you fed that to me 4 days a week, by Wednesday, you're going to get it thrown at you. I don't want that.
I get that. This is your passion. This isn't your day job.
Right.
It's your passion. And a lot of people will hear this, and I've had this question, and they'll say, why? Why do that? But I'm going to take it a step further and say, what has doing this work gifted you? Because you are Native. And tell us your tribes.
I'm Mohawk. Haudenosaunee, which is, you would call us the Iroquois. So it's the people of the Longhouse. So the Iroquois weren't what we called ourselves. So.
Okay. So you are reconnecting to something that you, or something?
So I'm also a forager. So, reading a lot of books about foraging, reading a lot of anything I can get my hands on about native foodways pertaining to the Northeast, not just kind of all of the U.S., because the Navajo don't eat anything like the Mohawk folks do. So
different nation.
As I read the books on foraging and was able to speak with elders here and there, what I realized was that we got a lot of credit for eating wild foods that we no longer ate. I mean, I'd ask about it, like mushrooms. I asked when I was in my 20s because I was working French food. I was very much into wild mushrooms and foraging for mushrooms, and I love the way they taste. And I asked some of my elders, about mushrooms. And there were several that said, no, we didn't eat those. No, they're bad. I knew that wasn't necessarily the truth. Yeah, I had relatives that ate the heck out of mushrooms and foraged for mushrooms and other things. As you read books, you glean bits and pieces of info.
Yeah.
So I sometimes call it my anti-racism glasses, because I read books, or I read, say, the Jesuit Relations, which are generally derogatory towards us. But you get things like, well, the Mohawks like to eat mushrooms. They go crazy for mushrooms in the fall. So they're out in the forest in the fall, gather mushrooms. You can't get them to do anything else on a nice day. It's small observations like that allow you to kind of extrapolate possibly how your ancestors ate. And unless you read those books, you either take it verbatim or it leads to other thought processes. And a lot of the time with me, I always question things. So I ask why. So I know something does something for a reason, but sometimes I just want to know why. And if nobody can tell me why, well, that sometimes leads into an even deeper rabbit hole that I'm like, it's 4 a.m. and I'm reading my 30th Google page on something, and all of a sudden someone's calling me an expert on something that I was just curious. I wanted a question answered. So in fact, we did eat mushrooms. We ate quite a bit of them, and there's evidence of that sometimes when you read about it in foraging books. So this led me down a path that contemporary Native Americans do not always talk about the wild foods that they ate, because we don't know. And we still eat some.
So it's changed your diet, but has it changed your relationship with your heritage?
To some degree, yeah. I mean, particularly as a city Indian, you're not always taken seriously by the res Indians, because the people that live on the reserves tend to think of themselves as more in touch with some of the intricacies of being Mohawk, the day-to-day stuff. And what I've realized after doing a lot of this board research, really. I mean, I'd come home from a long day and kind of be curious about something, and I'd read all the books that I had in the house about it. I'd Google it. I'd just look around. I'd ask questions of people that I knew. What I kind of grasped was that there's elders there that are kind of our culture bearers, if you will, faith keepers. Sometimes we say they don't know everything. I don't know everything. You don't know everything. So that's an important thing for me to realize is that there's people that are our knowledge keepers don't know everything. They're not an encyclopedia of things. And there are times when I know more than my elders about things, but I keep quiet about it because that's what I'm supposed to do. But it allows me to see them in a little bit of a different light. You're basically the knowledge keeper of that stuff, and that little bit of knowledge might not be a lot of stuff, and they're left in a half-filled room sometimes. So it's an intricate fight at times, and I'm just stubborn. Most Mohawks are pretty stubborn. If our foodways as they are now are a dozen dishes, like we mentioned earlier, they have to be much deeper than that. I'm not an authority. I'm just a guy that kind of knows stuff. But I tell kids when I lecture, don't be concerned with contemporary Native American cooking. You need to, if there's 1,000 people left in your nation or your tribe, you need to focus on your own people's So that's the way I look at foodways is that we have to rebuild our own foodways. I don't want a pan-Indian foodway just because we're decolonizing our diet, because frequently when you decolonize a diet and you add other things back to it, if you don't have any conscious thought as to what region you're going to be using things from, if you put quinoa in something where they used to have flour or whatever in it, you're just recolonizing it, but with another indigenous ingredient from areas that...
it always comes back down to context.
Yeah, I agree with decolonizing our food to some degree, but we can use the term melting pot. But 70% of the world's crops are native to the Americas. It's bigger when you start to add some of the other stuff. So I'm not so militant that I don't say, well, you know what? Flour's pretty good in cornbread.
Yeah.
It leavens it. It gives it a little bit of...
Corn nuts are good on top of hominy.
Exactly. There's things that I think we should use. And, bacon. I'm not going to give up bacon.
So I get
white cheddar on popcorn. I mean, do I really give that up? Maybe the orange stuff, because I'm just not a fan of orange
things.
Orange color in my food.
Well, I'd love to chat about this more, but it is that time of the interview. Oh, wow. Yes. Where I need to ask you a few questions and that I ask of everybody. And the first one really is, what is making you hungry? What's next on your little experimenting list? Just one thing.
Nuts and seeds.
Nuts and seeds are your new thing.
Yeah. It's crazy.
I feel like you already have nuts and seeds going.
I do, so but they're around quite a bit.
Are you collecting them? Are you hoarding them?
No, I'm eating them.
Okay.
Pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds. I do collect hickory nuts, but usually I make milk with it.
So you're not collecting nuts and seeds to grow?
As a chef, I don't have the time to grow corn. I mean, I found time to grow corn. I do it, but I'm not a gardener. Yeah. I'm not going to grow nuts and seeds at the house and harvest them and spend a whole, 15 hours a day doing that stuff on my one day off a week. No, that's not happening.
Yeah.
I need to lay on the couch and not do anything. I'm going to admit to that. But
well, you've mentioned that you're stubborn, which is a part of your personality. But what is one aspect of your personality that really meshes like a puzzle piece with the work that you do as a chef?
I don't know. It's probably that stubbornness. It's just an unwillingness sometimes to give up. My dad sometimes says, you get back up every time. That's stubborn, I guess. Sometimes that's conviction.
Or resilience.
Yeah, or resilience, which is
it's a lovely term. So what is one thing that is keeping you up at night?
Not getting enough sleep. I don't really pace the floor at night anymore about things. I'm a firm believer in the healing powers of natural medicine. So that's been something it's a natural pathway to, making yourself right. So that's one of the things that I use to, be...
This last question is my magic picnic basket question. So with this magic picnic basket, I can time travel. I can go back and ask anybody to make one more bite of something that you really like. I can source for you, although I'm pretty sure you have more corn contacts in your phone than I do. And I can cook a little bit. Definitely with cream cheese for sure. But I would love to put some things in your basket. This isn't a death row meal. This is a meal to bring you life. And so I know that shifts and changes. It doesn't have to all go together. I just want to know, we always end with this question because people like to know other people through food, the favorite foods. So what are some things that I can put in your basket?
Turkey, bacon, not very indigenous there. Bananas, nuts and seeds, granola at times, corn, obviously, in many different.
What's your favorite corn
varieties?
Dish?
My favorite corn dish.
Right now, what are you eating a lot of right now?
I'm eating a lot of those corn nuts right now. This winter, I released what we refer to as mush in the Northeast. So it's like a corn flour, but we make mushes in the Northeast with dried fruit a lot of the time, which some people might consider to be a sweet corn or a sweet grits, which would set Southerners on fire. But there's been no sugar added to the dried berries. So both strawberries and blueberries have a tremendous amount of vitamin C, more so than orange juice. But strawberries amongst Haudenosaunee people are the first thing that you feed people when they're sick. Now, you get trace elements and minerals and stuff like that, but they're packed with vitamin C. So when you think of somebody coming down with a cold or first starting to get sick, well, they've got a little bit of sugar, the residual sugars, but they've got the vitamin C. Pretty smart observation of the way to do things. So that was my first mush, was a strawberry mush that I used freeze-dried strawberries.
It sounds like a breakfast.
Nuts and seeds. If I get a piece of I think you'll find on my Instagram, you'll find nuts and seeds on top of mush with a piece of fry bread sticking out of it and some maple syrup. Maple has to be in the basket, not as a sweetener, but as a flavoring agent. Which that's a thought for some of you native people if you're listening.
Well, if people want to learn more about Dave and Corn Mafia, you know where to go. Go to thesouthernfork.com. I'm going to have links there as well as images so you can see the face behind the voice. If you like what you hear, there are more than 350 episodes in the archives. And this is my first Indigenous Foodways episode.
Wow.
I know.
Congrats.
Impressive. Yeah.
And you picked a Mohawk.
I did. Well, I don't think I had a choice. All right. Thanks so much for taking time to chat with me after a long day of chatting with other people and cooking. I really appreciate it.
The water helped. My voice, I hope, doesn't sound too bad.
No, it's great.
Okay, good.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Talking with My Mouth Full. I'm just going to dig in a little more about corn. I think it's a great opportunity to do so here. There is sweet corn, and that's the corn that we love to grow in our home gardens that we like to boil and slather butter on and sprinkle some salt on and have fresh corn on the cob, make creamed corn, all of those things. I don't know about you, but my granny made the best sweet creamed corn. But that's different than a lot of the corns that you're going to mill. And if you are listening to this in the United States, and 98% of you are, because I can look at the stats, then those are really coming from a number 2 dent corn. And that dent corn has a lot of starch. It's not as sweet to our human palates, but it has a lot of bioavailable things in it. That's the corn that actually makes your high fructose corn syrup. It's the corn that is milled into cornmeal and grits and corn flour or masa. It's those different varieties of corn versus a sweet corn like my favorite, Silver Queen. I love that variety of corn. So we're really getting into some bigger discussions of biodiversity when we talk about things like this. That's my job. That's my rabbit hole, one of many rabbit holes that I go down in my long-form writing projects. But suffice to say, what you're going to hear on the Southern Fork, I'm really showcasing smaller varieties of corn, micromilling. So Anson Mills also mills corn. Congaree Milling has grits. And then you've heard me talk about Jimmy Red corn. And then there is Bloody Butcher, which is another red corn in another area of the American South. So most of the United States grows the exact same variety of corn, and that corn comes from seed from one company. We're not going to even get into that. But a lot of other flavors are out there and nuances are out there in different varieties of corn. But sweet corn is for eating, not milling. Whew, that was a deep dive on the corn. So I hope that your corn is growing strong in your garden, or that you are looking for it in your favorite farmer's market. And if you're like me, I hope you keep an eye out for that variety Silver Queen, because it is, to me, the best corn on the cob or corn to make my granny's creamed corn. Have a great weekend. Happy Memorial Day. And if you took a shot every time I said corn in this Talking with My Mouthful episode, you're going to be drunk by now. So don't drive. been listening to The Southern Fork. I can't wait to bring you more culinary conversations, but in the meantime, I have one question. Are you gonna eat all that?